to this two-part podcast special on the subject of decoloniality. I've chosen to name this Let's Talk About Azania. Here with me, I've got multi-participants who are going to be joining me in this very emotive and very reflective subject. To my left, I've got Mr. Ntini, who is a professional engineer as well as an upcoming entrepreneur in the field of innovation for young African minds. To my right, I've got young ladies who are part of my local community, and I thought to have them on board because we want to speak about this in a casual and youthful setting. So we've got Ms. Farrell, who is studying towards a foundation phase education. And then we've got Ms. Noble, who is an undergraduate psychology student, as well as having majored in a philosophy course this year. So I thought, let me have them on board. We're coming from various backgrounds, and it is quite imperative to just have an engaging topic and find out exactly what different minds can come up with in terms of helping us come up with answers in terms of really what is the state of the decoloniality discourse in the Republic of South Africa, especially concerning the young people, the youth of South Africa. So anyway, without wasting further time, I'd like to just go briefly into my findings before we have set for this, because I had a chance to interview some of the young people in my community, my church circle. And one thing that came out for me is the fact that due to the title of this podcast, I'm saying, let's talk about Azania. I found out that a lot of young people did not even know or did not even have first-hand experience or knowledge to what this term Azania actually entails. And I thought to myself, this is a very intriguing issue. Why is Azania not visible in the minds of African people here in South Africa? Yet, when we look at the historical account, the name Azania does come up. Or is it really just a political term? So I need us, as we begin this speaking, as we begin this engagement, to hear from all of you, especially the young girls to my right, to really understand, did they know about Azania? And why didn't they know about Azania to begin with? So maybe I'll start off with you, Ms. Farrell. Before I had ever even approached you on this podcast special, did you know the title Azania? Had you ever come across it?
No.
Okay, and then what about you, Ms. Noble?
Never have I.
That's very interesting. So this actually does affirm to the fact that Azania is some of those terms that are still shrouded conversation in it. Mr. Ntini, maybe you might come in there. Don't you see in your immediate world the changes that coloniality had on your local community? Don't you see them on a day-to-day basis?
If I was to reflect on the engineering work that we do, one of the key laws that we frames, or in fact, it is a guidance to the development of, say, settlements and housing infrastructure, is called, in abbreviation, it's called SCNOMA, which in essence was passed by the government of South Africa as a tool to redress previous wrongs in relation to settlements. So you would find that there was the commonly known Group Areas Act, which put marginalized communities in the not so very good part of the city, while the white folks or the more affluent were placed in the better part of the city. And so on a day-to-day basis, what we have to confront in my field is we developing engineering solutions for the development of infrastructure, which redress the special problems of unequal settlements. Say, for instance, communities being located next to a highly polluted or hazardous environment, as opposed to others who are on the not on the windward slope and all of those basic issues. So it's things that we confront on a daily basis. The commute to and from work, quick and easy for others, and much longer and tedious for others. All those are issues that have a history in coloniality, and we must address them on an ongoing basis.
That is a very interesting point that you make, especially coming from the construction engineering side of things, because then it points out to even more abstract situations in which we can see that coloniality for sure has changed the landscape of, say, how South Africa was 400, 500 years ago. It is a point of concern, especially amongst professionals and so forth. But I want to hear from you, Ms. Farrell, and say, in a brief summary, what about South Africa's history sticks out for you?
I just think segregation. I think segregation, people not being able to communicate with the mixed race and stuff like that. I mean, now, compared to then, we weren't able to sit in a room full of different races, as opposed to now we're able to communicate and evolve as you know, units and stuff like that.
Yeah. So in itself, South Africa's history is very unique because it has a lot of segregation. So we want to, in this discussion, just be very casual about it and be useful about it, and just speak about the challenges of coming out from such a legacy, like such a colonial legacy, coming out and then coming out to a point of being decolonized, and the process with which we are going to have to follow. So now, I'm going to ask maybe Ms. Noble, can you just briefly and comfortably just tell us what emotions come through in you after you hear of situations like segregation, and maybe how that maybe some in your family went through certain things, being mixed race and so forth and so forth. What type of emotions? Because one thing that we have to realize, which I have come to know of in the subject of decoloniality, is that decoloniality is an emotional subject. We cannot confront some of these issues.
Secondary sadness and anger at the injustices as compared to like the society as a whole which we're growing up. It seems almost unimaginable that not so long ago such human rights were exploited. And so yes, the emotion that I feel is horror when I hear about the graphic story. And yeah.
Yeah, and then now I want to just come through a very touchy subject. But remember, we still staying out of the aggression and everything, because I do feel sometimes aggression can be, kind of misleading and can limit on progression, personally though. But I want to just speak briefly on, say, the Black lived experience, because I do feel that there was a kind of confronting this. Let's be truthful. There was a spectrum to this. The darker you were, the harder it was. And so, along maybe political lines, that narrative is still going through, that the Black person really had it harder, right? So, for instance, I will briefly just go through some of the things that I come to learn of in the subject, is the fact that we have to recognize the fact that coloniality sought to dehumanize the Black person in an almost weird fashion, in the sense that for a second, it would feel like being Black meant you were half human or so forth. Because, for instance, Esther touched on the fact that we're saying that Black people could not go to certain areas, but you're a living human being. You could not breathe the same air as another human being. So those are the confrontations, as difficult as they are. But getting into a decolonial mind says you look at them, you confront them in a healthy way, and then you come up with solutions of getting out of it. Because all these things, they did bring some type of a complex, an inferiority complex, where you feel like you're lower, you're really dehumanized, you're really not human enough. But now I'm going to move to Mr. Dean. As uncomfortable it is, tell me about the Black lived experience from how, say, your fathers have spoken about it, and maybe with you as well, as you have grown, maybe even in your personal space as a student, varsity, all of that. You just tell me about your Black lived experience.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll try and just zoom into those realities which perhaps are still evident currently. It is common knowledge that, say, within the engineering fraternity, I'll have to be twice as good to be trusted that the quality of my advice, professional deliverables will be on point. Yet, others on the other side of the table are afforded automatic trust and expectation of excellence. And look, that is common, and you would find that when, however, we get going with the actual work, many of us are fairly more than competent when it comes to the actual deliverables. Yet, against the backdrop of the fact that at the starting point, you must excel beyond and prove your work. Let people prove that they can trust that your work is quality. So it is a small example of the lived experience that is linked to coloniality. But I must go further at the same time and reflect professionally and say, when government puts in place qualifiers for tenders and projects, and they say, be scoring themselves, it works and it is important, it's part of your dress. However, on one side, when people see you in certain platforms and certain big projects, their first assumption is BE has afforded you that, as opposed to your qualifications. You know, that you are here purely because you are a BE partner and not a qualified person who can occupy the seat, the driver's seat for whatever opportunity there is. So on a day-to-day basis, those are things that we confront in the engineering field. But let me take it to a simpler level.
Yeah.
You know, you go to a particular restaurant, and there are definite certain atmospheres that say, are you sure you are allowed? You know, when you walk in there, when you look at the demographic distribution, some places, you know, it still does have that little cringe on you. They say, just check whether you're really allowed to come in here. But those are easier to overcome. And I think that many of us, we have overcome that, walk into as many things as we pockets.
This is a question of interest.
Yes. Mhm.
You raise such an interesting point because it's a very practical one.
Mm.
For you, you seem to be in a space where there's a lot of comfort in terms of your state of mind, your confidence, and how do you overcome situations where you move into a space and you're not even sure whether can you be part of the party and so forth and so forth?
All of us will always lean on the history of exposure. No one will walk into any new environment without with 100% confidence. But the more you are exposed to things, the more comfortable you become. And so, reflecting on the coloniality issue, it simply says that many previously disadvantaged folks have not had enough exposure to walk into places with their heads lifted high. And so we tiptoe until we feel comfortable.
And don't you think this is also part of the fact that being in a position of not wanting to confront will always lead you to not even going above the situation because you're not exposing yourself. I think he's saying is very true because I will echo the same sentiments in the sense that for me, I personally chose that I would rather, as an African person who is proud of their identity and proud of their, origin and everything, will consciously send my child, say, to situations that will help them, say, in the schooling front, that will help them not grow up with a certain type of timidity to say, in this case, say, a white man, or a certain timidity to whiteness. Because I do feel that previously marginalized communities have a problem because of the lack of exposure. They will always think that whiteness is great. And that's exactly what coloniality is propagating. Coloniality thrives on a dual system: black, white, slave, master, rich, poor. But they conquer. Dini, would you like to add on to like the situation of the human race versus all the divisions and categorizing that comes with coloniality?
Yes, in fact, thank you. I'm of the opinion that the talking always about on the first black this, first black that is wrong because it continues to reinforce the differences between humans as opposed to celebrating excellence as excellence from any direction. So excellence has no color. Excellence demands the same from all athletes, from all students, from all. And so we must reinforce these the ideals and the attributes we want as opposed to who is doing them, So if I get an A, it's the same A that someone else is copying. And that's what we should do.
South Africa is that South Africa is just a direction. Don't you agree? It's like literally not a name. What's in a name?
Mm.
What's in a name? The identity is in a name. But if you say South Africa, you're just pointing towards the cardinal points and necessarily not giving it its identity. So, and the situation goes as far as saying the reason why we say South Africa is maybe because it's just a term that follows the scramble and partition of South Africa, where so and so can take the portion of Southern Africa and so forth and so forth. But anyway, like you said, we're not just dealing with the etymology of Azania and all of those things, we're not going to deal with that. But it was a focus point that unearths the discussion that we want to talk about, which is essentially decoloniality. But Mr. Ndini, you seem to be really a man of balance in terms of your viewpoints, and that's very interesting because I think it also lends to your your business ideas and visions concerning innovation and so forth. So amongst the young African people. So I would like to ask you a question. How does the innovation space feature as a measure to emancipate and decolonize young African minds towards development?
The first starting point, you know, the environmentalists, all that they are busy doing is they are protecting balanced ecosystems everywhere in the world. The first part of innovation for any young person is understanding that your existence is fruitful and successful in as far as you coexist with others. You see? So that is the starting point. When we recognize that our coexistence with others in a balanced fashion is what will bring about our own success, then it allows us to begin to think beyond the limitations of the past. You see, I should be willing to work with anyone in the country if it is going to be beneficial. You know, we talk of a good ecosystem is one where there is mutual beneficiation. Now, clearly, others benefited in the past and they are ahead, and we've got to accept that. Now, the only way for you to catch up is reach out to the ladder that they already have climbed and let them pull you up. But if you try and isolate yourself, you cut yourself completely from the potential benefits that you can read from them. There is a saying in Zulu, "Inyati kulizo baba mami." Now, if you accept that others have advanced more than you, your starting point should not be to limit yourself from dealing with them, but open up and deal with them. They are advanced. They are ahead. Accept that. You see, acceptance of that others have an advantage in one dimension. That acceptance does not play down your own advantages, but to really realize, innovate, and grow. Understand the comparative advantages that others already have and use them. See, use them. And that's the only way to really unlock your own.
We have to recognize that South Africa is still in an ongoing journey towards.
I do wish at the same time to qualify and give perspective to why there is a general tendency to celebrate first black to do this, first black in this and that. It's the foundation of that kind of recognition is an acceptance of history. It's an acceptance that history starts off everything on an unequal plane. And because it is starting on an unequal plane, people then use that to celebrate emancipation. As people achieve, so celebrate. Perhaps there will come a time when we no longer celebrate first black that, because there is just so many achievements that have been achieved by the previously colonized, and also that there is the playing ground has been so even that it is now commonplace. You see, so I am saying this to bring about to highlight the issue of balance. Yes.
I also think with regards to having like the first black person or even basic ID, you know, you get like, okay, the first black person to be an entrepreneur in their community, but it also dies down to upliftment. You know, with regards to having the first entrepreneur, what is that entrepreneur doing to uplift their community to make their whole community, you know, evolve and stuff like that. And we were having a conversation yesterday about upliftment. You have one person in the community that's doing well, and the people in the community will not encourage that one person. They will actually discourage that person because of where they are. But it also is also on the person, like entrepreneurs, you know, shoulder to uplift the community, you know, let them be exposed because exposure is key and stuff like that. So I like that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Because one other thesis that a philosopher by the name of Nelson Maldonado Torres, who is a pioneer for decoloniality, he writes very beautiful and proactive tips into how to become a decolonized society. He speaks on the fact that community is at the epicenter of achieving decolonialism. I would say the reason why, say, certain communities might resist, you know, uplifting somebody is because of still being in a colonial mindset, inferiority complexes that have come up. Because for a second, it might seem like, oh, you're trying to climb the ladder and stuff like that. Because we, Blackness, we can't aspire to that. It's never been like that. So maybe those are the little minuscule reasons why, and those are the issues that say to us, the confrontation of those things might just help us move out of it and then become a society where we realize that there's power in just who you are. And revisit the past, do something about the past and what it has done to you so that you can help your children, and then the future can become a place where you are able to really exercise exactly what your sole purpose has been about. But then now, maybe let me come to Ms. Noble and ask on a very interesting facet that has come up with what Mr. Ndini has said and what Ms. Farrell has said. Let's talk about the economics of getting out of a colonial system. Do you agree that as long as there is no economic power in previously disadvantaged or previously marginalized communities, as long as there's no economic emancipation, we cannot really achieve decoloniality? Do you think it's true?
I think it is true because in previously disadvantaged communities, I'd say they cannot afford the kind of education and money needed in order to awaken one's mind to coloniality in itself. And so that's one way in which the economic circumstances disadvantaged.
I'd like now to say that the country, for it to really decolonize on a social level, it must have a unifying agenda that says, let's come together, let's celebrate the new direction that the country is taking. Where there is no more us and them, but it's a togetherness that is fruitful and closes all of the doors of the past.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndini. So in conclusion to this discussion of ours, I'm just wanting to ask you a brief question. It's the same question that I'll throw to both of you young ladies, to say, do you see yourself being a healthy thinker towards decoloniality with everything that we've discussed here, towards decoloniality in your local communities? Or if you do have some reservations of challenges that you think you would maybe ever face because of all the things that we've been saying, difference of opinions, lack of upliftment, just thinking on all of those things, do you see yourself as a healthy thinker? Because like we've said, saying decoloniality is confronting things in a very responsible way and managing to get to a point where you understand your worth and you understand that, okay, Clement might have taken this and this away from me, but then let me push in a direction that says, I'm happy with who I am and I can still make it and I can still live in a similar fashion to what previously was thought that I couldn't achieve that. So do you see yourself being a healthy thinker towards decoloniality in your local communities?
This, I do see myself being a healthy thinker. But like you mentioned, there are going to be challenges because lack of exposure with regards to the community not being really open to doing new stuff and stuff like that, because of colonialization, not being able
Because what you will recognize, Ms. Farrell, is the fact that when I'm saying local community, I mean, this you can say from the family setting.
because also to make reference to segregation, even within my family. My dad's parents were interracial. His dad was white and his mom was Sotho. So because my dad was born from an Indian, his father's parents didn't accept my father because of the color of his skin. So I think like even them, they're on because of those feelings, they're not open to doing new stuff because of their past. It's all, past the history and stuff like that, with the minor history, and that holds the community and even families. Us not being exposed, we're not able to develop. And it also dies down with the community. If you're not exposed to certain things that are going to uplift us, how will we evolve as a country? That is why we are still sitting at a status of developing, not developed. So I think it's just exposure for me and being open up to doing new things and not having pride. I think that's the thing, not having pride.
Looking at the other person as an equal, because they're also breathing the same air. Nothing is different.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ms. Noble?
I think I definitely will be the kind of thinker that brings up the perspective within conversations in my community, especially because I've noticed that a lot of my community has become complacent with coloniality, and they don't see decoloniality a necessary thing. They don't see why they not really see an issue with the way things are now. And to change their perspective and to show them that there are still many ways in which our society has not been able to play, and even our mindset and the way we talk about certain things and perspectives we have is evidence that we still have a colonial mindset.
Yeah, definitely such an interesting engagement that we had today. It's been very vibrant.